The workshop smelled like motor oil and betrayal at 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep, hadn't been able to for weeks actually, so I was down here in the basement of our Victorian house, pretending to fix a carburetor that didn't need fixing. Tomorrow was supposed to be my wedding day, the biggest day of my life, according to Sophie. Right now, it felt more like my execution. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name's Nick Carver, and I've been rebuilding boat engines in this Maine town for 12 years. I'm good with my hands, better with machines than people, and apparently blind as a bat when it comes to reading women, especially the woman I was supposed to marry in 14 hours. The house creaked above me, old bones settling, or maybe Sophie getting up for one of her midnight bathroom runs. She'd been restless lately, claimed it was wedding nerves. I'd believed her because I'm an idiot who fixes things for a living and thought I could fix us too. My phone buzzed on the workbench, a text notification, then another, then a whole string of them, lighting up the screen like a Christmas tree. I wiped my greasy hands on a rag and picked it up, expecting maybe Sam or Uncle Stan checking in about tomorrow's bachelor party aftermath cleanup. Instead, I saw, "Bridesmaids chat. You've been added to the group." What the hell? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the notification. This had to be a mistake. Jenna, Sophie's maid of honor, was probably trying to add someone else and hit my contact by accident. She'd done dumber things. I opened the chat. Jenna: "Ladies, emergency meeting. Sophie needs us." Tara: "What happened? Cold feet?" Maya: "Please tell me she's not backing out. I already bought the dress." Then I saw Sophie's name pop up. My Sophie, my fiancée, the woman who'd been lying next to me every night for 3 years, planning our future. Sophie: "I can't do this. I need closure first. Meeting E at the old spot." My heart stopped. Eli Morrison, her ex-boyfriend, the personal trainer with abs you could grate cheese on and the personality of a wet napkin. The guy she swore meant nothing to her anymore. Jenna: "Girl, yes, get that closure. You deserve it." Tara: "Make sure he knows what he lost, then come home to your man." Maya: "Take pics. Not those kinds of pics. Well, maybe 1 or 2. I sat there in my basement workshop, surrounded by the honest smell of motor oil and metal, reading my fiancé's friends encourage her to cheat on me 12 hours before our wedding. The messages kept coming, each one a knife twist. Sophie: "You guys are the best. I just need to know if there's still something there before I commit forever." Jenna: "Babe, if you don't find out now, you'll always wonder." Tara: "Better to know than spend your whole marriage thinking about it." Maya: "Just be careful and use protection. LOL. The laughing emoji. They were laughing about my Sophie going to screw her ex while I sat here like a fool, worrying about whether the flowers would arrive on time. I scrolled up through older messages I'd apparently missed. Days of planning, weeks of Sophie complaining about me to her friends, calling me sweet but boring, wondering if she was settling. Screenshots of Eli's Instagram posts, the girls analyzing every shirtless photo like they were studying for finals. Sophie, from 2 weeks ago. He asked me to meet him, said he made a mistake letting me go. Jenna: "What did you tell him?" Sophie: "That I'm getting married. But God, you guys, he looked so good at the grocery store yesterday." Tara: "There's nothing wrong with looking." Maya: "Or touching. Just saying." Sophie: "You're terrible. But maybe just once. Before I'm tied down forever." I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. My hands weren't shaking yet, but they would be soon. The workshop felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. Everything I thought I knew about my life had just crumbled in a group chat I wasn't supposed to see. Above me, I heard footsteps. Sophie, moving around our bedroom, getting dressed probably, putting on something nice for Eli, something I'd bought her most likely. I picked up the phone again and kept reading, The messages got worse, more explicit, more cruel. They talked about me like I was a placeholder, a safe option while Sophie figured out what she really wanted. They laughed about my cute little business and how I tried so hard to make her happy. Sophie, yesterday. Sometimes I watch him working on those boats and think, is this it? Is this my life? Married to a guy who smells like motor oil and talks about carburetors at dinner? Jenna, you could do worse. Sophie, could I do better though? That's the question. Tara, only one way to find out. The messages ended with tonight's plan. Sophie would sneak out after I fell asleep, meet Eli at their old spot by the lake, and get closure before the wedding. The girls would cover for her if anyone asked. They'd even prepared alibis. I sat in that basement for another hour, reading and rereading every word. By the time I heard Sophie's car pull out of the driveway at 4 a.m., I wasn't angry anymore. I was something colder, something more dangerous. Anger burns hot and dies fast. What I felt now would last. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom and looked around. Her wedding dress hung on the closet door, white and pure and expensive. Her shoes were lined up like soldiers, ready for battle. Her makeup was spread across the vanity like war paint. Everything was perfect. Everything was ready. Everything was about to change. I opened my laptop and started typing. Bank accounts, vendor contracts, hotel reservations, credit cards. Everything we'd built together, everything we'd planned, every detail of tomorrow's wedding, it all had my name on it too. Sophie had been happy to let me handle the boring business stuff while she focused on the fun parts, like dresses and flowers and, apparently, screwing her ex. Time to show her how boring business stuff could be. By the time Sophie's car pulled back into the driveway at dawn, I had already dismantled our entire financial life together. Quietly, efficiently, like taking apart an engine, every piece in its place, every connection severed cleanly. I heard her key in the front door, heard her trying to be quiet on the stairs. She slipped into bed beside me, reeking of cheap cologne and guilt. I waited until she settled, then rolled over and looked at her in the dim morning light. Good rehearsal? I asked quietly. She froze. What? You left at 4. Figured you were practicing your walk down the aisle or something. Her face went pale. I couldn't sleep, went for a drive. Ah. I nodded like that made perfect sense. Well, you should get some rest. Big day ahead. She stared at me, searching my face for something. Anger, maybe. Suspicion. Hurt. I gave her nothing. Just smiled and rolled back over. Sweet dreams, Sophie. She didn't sleep. Neither did I. We both lay there in the growing daylight, pretending everything was normal, while the space between us filled with secrets and lies and the approaching sound of our wedding bells. At 7 a.m., I got up and made coffee like it was any other day. Sophie watched me from the kitchen doorway, wrapped in the silk robe I'd bought her for Valentine's Day. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. But now I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the way she was measuring my mood, trying to figure out how much I knew. You seem calm, she said carefully. I handed her a mug, the one that said Future Mrs. Carver in script letters. Why wouldn't I be calm? It's my wedding day. She flinched at the word wedding like I'd slapped her. Good. Are you excited? She asked. Thrilled. I sipped my coffee and looked out the window at our neighbor, Mrs. Daly, who was already up and watering her garden. Mrs. Daly knew everyone's business in this town, usually before they knew it themselves. She'd be very interested in today's events. Sophie's phone buzzed, then again. The bridesmaids, probably, checking in on their co-conspirator. She grabbed it quickly, but not before I saw Jenna's name on the screen. I should get ready, she said. Jenna's picking me up at 9 for hair and makeup. Of course she is. Something in my tone made her look at me sharply. Nick, is everything okay? You're acting strange. I set down my mug and turned to face her fully. Strange how? I don't know. Different, like you're... She searched for words, like you're somewhere else. I'm right here, Sophie. Right where I've always been. She didn't like that answer. I could see her mind working, trying to parse my words for hidden meaning. After 3 years together, she knew me well enough to know when something was off. She just didn't know what. I love you, she said suddenly, desperately. You know that, right? I know you're marrying me today. That's not what I asked. I smiled, and it felt like ice cracking. It's the only answer that matters. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and fled upstairs. I heard the shower start, heard her moving around getting ready for the most important performance of her life. While she was busy, I got to work. First, I called the bank. Joint account frozen, pending suspicious activity. It would take days to sort out, and by then, it wouldn't matter. Sophie's personal account barely had enough to cover her car payment. Next, the vendors. I'd paid them all personally months ago, but the contracts had a clause about payment disputes. I activated it. Every single one. The florist, the caterer, the photographer, the band, all of them would now require cash payment from Sophie's family before providing services. The hotel was trickier. Our honeymoon suite was booked and paid for. I couldn't cancel it without penalties, but I could modify it. I spent 20 minutes on the phone with a very confused desk clerk, changing the reservation from Mr. and Mrs. Carver to Mr. Carver, single occupancy. Are you sure, sir? This is the honeymoon package. Plans change, I told him. Uncle Stan called while I was on hold with the wedding venue. You ready for this, boy? His gravelly voice was warm with affection. Stan had been more of a father to me than my real dad ever was. He'd taught me everything I knew about fixing engines and reading people. Ready as I'll ever be. You sound funny. Everything all right? I looked up at the ceiling, where I could hear Sophie blow-drying her hair. Just wedding nerves. Sophie treating you right? The question hit harder than it should have. Stan had never quite warmed to Sophie, though he'd never said why. Now I wondered what he'd seen that I'd missed. She's being herself, I said. Stan was quiet for a moment. You need anything, you call me. Anything at all. I will. I mean it, Nick. Day or night. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about that conversation. Stan knew something, had probably known for a while. The old bastard had been trying to warn me without actually saying the words. The venue was next, Riverside Grange Hall, where half the town got married and the other half got divorced. I'd put down a deposit 6 months ago, but the balance was due this morning. Instead of paying it, I disputed the charges and requested a full refund due to breach of contract. What breach? The manager asked. You'll find out, I told her. By the time Jenna's car pulled into my driveway, I had systematically destroyed every arrangement Sophie and I had made together. The wedding would still happen, technically. The venue was paid for, the guests were invited, the minister was booked. But everything else, all the details that made a wedding into a celebration, would fall apart exactly when Sophie needed them most. I watched from the window as Sophie came downstairs in jeans and a t-shirt, her hair in curlers, carrying the garment bag with her dress. She looked nervous, kept checking her phone. The bridesmaids were probably giving her pep talks, telling her everything would work out, that she could have her cake and eat it too. She paused at the front door and looked back toward the kitchen. Nick, I'm leaving. Have fun, I called back. She waited, maybe hoping I'd come kiss her goodbye, tell her I loved her, give her some reassurance that everything was normal. When I didn't appear, she sighed and walked out. Through the window, I watched Jenna's car pull away with my fiancé inside. In a few hours, they'd be at the venue, discovering that nothing was as it should be. The flowers wouldn't arrive. The caterer would demand cash. The photographer would pack up and leave. And I would be nowhere to be found. I went upstairs to pack. One bag, just the essentials. I wasn't running away. Not exactly. I was staging a tactical retreat, letting the chaos unfold while I watched from a safe distance. In the bedroom, I found Sophie's laptop open on the vanity. She'd been in such a hurry, she'd forgotten to close it. The screen showed her email, and right there at the top was a message from Eli. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. Are you sure about today? It's not too late to change your mind. I meant what I said. I want you back, for real this time. I stared at that message for a long time. Last night was incredible. The words burned themselves into my brain. While I'd been sitting in my workshop reading their group chat, while I'd been lying awake planning my revenge, Sophie had been with him, touching him, kissing him, doing things she used to do with me. I screenshotted the email and sent it to myself. Evidence. Then I kept digging. Her browser history was a goldmine. Weeks of secret communication with Eli. Dating websites she'd been browsing just out of curiosity. Apartment listings in Portland, an hour away. She'd been planning her escape route long before last night. But the worst part was the photos. Hidden in a folder labeled work stuff were dozens of pictures I'd never seen. Sophie and Eli together, recent ones. Some were innocent, coffee dates, walks by the lake. Others weren't. There was one taken in our bedroom, in our bed, while I'd been at work. I copied everything to a flash drive. Every photo, every email, every browser search. Then I deleted the originals and cleared her history. Let her wonder how much I knew. My phone rang. Sam, my best friend and best man. Dude, where are you? I'm at the venue and it's chaos here. The florist never showed up, the caterer's demanding cash, and Jenna's having a complete meltdown. Sounds rough. Rough? Nick, it's a disaster. Sophie's crying, her mom screaming at everyone, and the photographer just left. What the hell happened? I looked around our bedroom one last time. At the bed, where Sophie had betrayed me. At the vanity where she'd painted her face every morning while planning her lies. At the window where I'd watched her leave with her co-conspirators. I guess someone forgot to pay the bills, I said. This isn't funny, man. Where are you? I'll be there soon. How soon? Because Sophie's asking for you, and she looks like she's about to have a panic attack. I smiled. The first real smile I'd had in hours. Tell her I said not to worry. Everything's going exactly according to plan. I hung up and finished packing. One bag, one flash drive, and a heart full of ice-cold satisfaction. By the time I walked out of that house, I wasn't Nick Carver, the trusting fool who fixed boats and believed in love. I was someone else entirely, someone who knew how to break things just as well as he could fix them. The Riverside Grange Hall looked like a war zone when I finally arrived. I'd taken my time, stopping for coffee and a newspaper like it was any other Saturday morning. Through the tall windows, I could see people rushing around inside, their movements sharp with panic. I parked across the street and watched the show. Sophie stood on the front steps in her wedding dress, which was beautiful and probably cost more than most people's cars. Her face was streaked with tears, and her hands were shaking as she talked rapidly into her phone. Jenna hovered beside her like a nervous butterfly, while Tara and Maya formed a protective circle, shooting suspicious glances at everyone who passed. Mrs. Daly was there too, of course, standing with a cluster of other town gossips. They weren't even pretending not to stare. This would be the talk of the coffee shop for months. My phone buzzed with texts from the bridesmaids group chat. I was still in it. They'd forgotten to remove me in all the chaos. Jenna. Where is he? Tara. This is so weird. Nick's never late for anything. Maya. Sophie's losing it. Should we call the police? Sophie. Something's wrong. This isn't like him. What if he had an accident? I almost laughed. What if he had an accident? Sophie was worried about me having an accident while she was wearing the dress I'd paid for to marry me after cheating with her ex. The irony was beautiful. I got out of my truck and crossed the street. People noticed me immediately. The whispers started before I was halfway to the building. I walked calmly, like a man without a care in the world. "Nick!" Jenna spotted me first and came running over, her maid of honor dress hiked up so she wouldn't trip. "Thank God! Where have you been? Everything's falling apart." "I can see that." I looked past her to where Sophie was standing. Our eyes met across the chaos, and I saw her face crumple with relief. "Nick!" She ran down the steps, her dress trailing behind her like a white flag of surrender. "I was so scared something happened to you." She threw her arms around me, and for a moment I almost forgot everything. She felt familiar, smelled like the perfume I'd bought her for Christmas. For just a second, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her. Then I remembered Eli's email. Last night was incredible. I stepped back, gently but firmly removing her arms from around my neck. "Sorry I'm late. Had some business to take care of." "Business? Today?" Sophie's voice cracked. "Nick, the flowers didn't come, the caterer wants cash we don't have, and the photographer left. What business could be more important than our wedding?" I looked around at the gathered crowd. Half the town was here, either as guests or as spectators drawn by the drama. Perfect. "The kind of business that needed to be finished before I made any promises I couldn't keep," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Sophie blinked. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, I pulled out my phone and opened the bridesmaids group chat. My fingers moved quickly over the screen, typing a message I'd been composing in my head all morning. Nick. "Ladies, thanks for including me in your group chat. Very enlightening. Sophie, I hope you got the closure you were looking for last night. Eli, if you're reading this, she's all yours. I'm out." I hit send and watched the chaos unfold in real time. Jenna's phone buzzed, then Tara's, then Maya's. One by one, they read my message, and one by one, their faces went white. "Oh my God," Maya whispered. "He knows," Tara said. Jenna just stared at her phone like it had turned into a snake. Sophie was still looking at me, confused. "Nick, what's going on? What group chat?" I held up my phone so she could see the screen. "The one where you and your friends planned your little rendezvous with Eli, the one where they encouraged you to cheat on me 12 hours before our wedding. Ring any bells?" The color drained from Sophie's face so fast I thought she might faint. Around us, the crowd had gone silent. Even the children had stopped running around. Everyone was listening now. "Nick, I can explain—" "Can you?" I interrupted. "Can you explain why you snuck out at 4 a.m. to screw your ex-boyfriend? Can you explain why you've been planning your escape route for weeks? Can you explain this?" I pulled out my phone again and showed her the screenshot of Eli's email. Last night was incredible. Sophie made a sound like a wounded animal. "You went through my email?" "You left it open, sloppy, but then again, you never were good at covering your tracks." The crowd was pressing closer now, sensing blood in the water. Mrs. Daly had her phone out, probably live streaming the whole thing. This would be on social media before the hour was up. "Please," Sophie whispered. "Can we talk about this privately?" "Privately?" I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. "Like you talked privately with Eli? Like you privately planned to humiliate me in front of everyone I know? No, Sophie, we're way past private." Jenna tried to step between us. "Nick, you're upset, but this isn't the way." "Don't." I held up a hand, and she stopped mid-sentence. "Don't you dare try to manage this situation. You encouraged her. You all did. You sat in your little group chat and laughed about what a fool I was, how boring I was, how she could do better." Tara was crying now. "We didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it, Tara? When you told her to find out now instead of wondering her whole marriage? When you said, better to know than spend your whole marriage thinking about it? How exactly did you mean that?" She had no answer. None of them did. I turned back to Sophie, who was standing there in her expensive dress, looking like her world had just ended. Which, to be fair, it had. You want to know what's really funny? I said. I actually came here to marry you. Even after reading every message, even after seeing the photos, even after watching you sneak back into our bed reeking of him, I still came here, because I'm an idiot who believes in keeping promises. Then let's do it, Sophie said desperately. Let's get married. We can work through this, Nick. People make mistakes. Mistakes? I stared at her. Sophie, you've been cheating on me for weeks. You've been planning your exit strategy. You slept with him last night, and then came home and lied to my face this morning. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. A series of choices. She was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks in black rivers. I love you, Nick. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. No, I said quietly. You love the idea of me. You love having a safe backup plan while you figure out what you really want. But you don't love me. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. I looked around at the crowd of faces, some sympathetic, some shocked, some openly enjoying the drama. These were my neighbors, my customers, people I'd known for years. They'd all remember this day. The wedding's off, I announced. Obviously. Sophie and her friends have other priorities. Nick, wait! Sophie grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. What about everything we planned? What about our future? I looked down at her hand on my sleeve, at the engagement ring I'd saved for 6 months to buy her, at the woman I'd thought I was going to spend my life with. What about it? I said. You threw it away last night. I'm just making it official. I pulled free and walked toward my truck. Behind me, I could hear Sophie calling my name, could hear the crowd buzzing with excitement, could hear Jenna trying to do damage control. I didn't look back, but I wasn't done, not even close. As I drove away from the venue, I pulled out my phone and sent one more message to the group chat. Nick, by the way, ladies, you might want to check your own relationships. Maya, your boyfriend Jason might be interested to know about your girls' night out last month with that bartender from Portland. Tara, I'm sure Kevin would love to see those photos from your work conference in Boston. And Jenna, well, let's just say your husband might want to know where you really were when you said you were visiting your mother. I hit send and smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is just telling the truth. I drove to Uncle Stan's bar, knowing it would be empty at 11 in the morning on a Saturday. Stan was behind the counter, reading a newspaper and drinking coffee from a mug that said, World's Okayest Uncle. He looked up when I walked in, took one look at my face, and poured me a whiskey without being asked. So, he said, how'd it go? I downed the whiskey in one gulp. About as well as you'd expect. Stan nodded, like that explained everything. You want to talk about it? She cheated last night with her ex. The words came out flat and emotionless. Her friends helped plan it. Shit. Stan poured me another whiskey. I'm sorry, boy. Are you? I looked at him over the rim of my glass. Because you never seemed to like her much. Stan was quiet for a long moment, wiping down glasses that were already clean. Wasn't my place to say anything. But since you asked, no, I didn't like her. Girl always struck me as the type who was looking for something better to come along. Well, she found it. I pulled out my phone and showed him Eli's email. He muttered, What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Sophie Lane really is. My phone was buzzing constantly now. Texts, calls, voicemails. Sophie, the bridesmaids, my parents, random wedding guests who'd heard the news. I ignored them all except one, Detective Price, my old friend from high school who'd joined the police force while I'd gone into boat repair. His message was short. Heard about the wedding. You okay? Call me. I called him back while Stan pretended not to listen. Nick, Price's voice was careful. Where are you right now? Stan's bar. Why? Because Sophie and her friends are at the station filing a missing persons report. They're saying you threatened them and then disappeared. I laughed, which probably wasn't the reaction Price was expecting. Threatened them how? They claim you were acting erratic and made some kind of veiled threats before leaving the venue. Sophie's particularly concerned about your mental state. My mental state. I looked at Stan, who was shaking his head in disgust. Did they mention why I might be upset? They said there was a misunderstanding about some text messages. A misunderstanding? Right. I took another sip of whiskey. Price, I need you to know something. I'm not missing, I'm not suicidal, and I didn't threaten anyone. What I did was find out my fiancé has been cheating on me and call off the wedding. That's it. Can you prove the cheating? I thought about the flash drive in my truck, full of photos and emails and browser history. Oh yeah, I can prove it. Good, because they're also talking about filing harassment charges over some group text you sent. The group text where I revealed that they'd all been cheating on their partners? That harassment? Price was quiet for a moment. Jesus, Nick, what did you do? I told the truth. Apparently that's illegal now. It's not illegal, but it's dangerous. You've got 4 angry women spinning a story about you being unstable and threatening. In a small town like this, that kind of talk spreads fast. He was right. I could already see how this would play out. Sophie and her friends would paint themselves as victims, claim I'd been controlling or abusive, maybe even suggest I'd been the one cheating. By the time they were done, I'd be the villain in my own story. What do you suggest? I asked. Lay low for a few days. Let them calm down. Don't contact Sophie or any of the bridesmaids. Don't post anything on social media. Just disappear for a while. I can do that. And Nick, if you've got evidence of the cheating, keep it safe. You might need it. After I hung up, Stan refilled my glass without being asked. You got a place to stay? The cabin. Stan nodded. The cabin was a little place by the lake that I'd inherited from my grandfather. It was isolated, peaceful, and completely off the grid. Perfect for a man who needed to disappear for a while. What about your business? Sam can handle things for a few days. I stood up and left money on the bar. Stan, if anyone comes looking for me... I haven't seen you, he said immediately. Haven't heard from you either. I was halfway to the door when my phone buzzed with a new message. Not from Sophie or the bridesmaids this time. From Eli. Eli. Dude, what the hell? Sophie's a mess. You didn't have to humiliate her like that. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Eli had some nerve defending Sophie after sleeping with her the night before her wedding. I typed back, didn't have to sleep with her either, but here we are. Eli. Look, I know you're pissed, but she loves you. Last night was just closure. It didn't mean anything. Nick, if it didn't mean anything, why did you email her this morning saying it was incredible? No response to that one. Nick, stay away from me, Eli, I mean it. Eli. Or what? You'll key my car again? I stopped walking. What? Eli. Sophie told me you keyed my car last month. Real mature, bro. I hadn't keyed anyone's car, but the fact that Sophie had told Eli I had meant she'd been talking to him for weeks, confiding in him, probably complaining about me, building a case for why she deserved better. Nick. I never touched your car, but thanks for letting me know how long this has been going on. This time there was a long pause before he responded. Eli. It's not what you think. Nick. It's exactly what I think. You've been circling my relationship like a vulture, and Sophie's been letting you. Well, congratulations. She's all yours now. Eli. We need to talk, face to face, like men. I almost laughed. Like men. This from the guy who'd been sneaking around with another man's fiancée. Nick. You want to talk like men? Here's some man talk. You're a piece of shit who goes after engaged women. Sophie's a cheating liar who was using me as a safety net. You two deserve each other. Eli. Meet me at the lake. 1 hour. We'll settle this. Nick. Settle what? You already won. Enjoy your prize. I turned off my phone and got in my truck. The lake was exactly where I was headed, but not to meet Eli. I was going to my cabin to lay low and figure out my next move. But as I drove through town, I couldn't stop thinking about that conversation. Eli wanted to settle this like we were in some kind of competition, like Sophie was a trophy to be won instead of a person who'd made her choice. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Not just at Sophie anymore, but at Eli. At the casual way he'd dismissed what he'd done. At how he'd tried to make me the bad guy for humiliating Sophie when he was the one who'd been screwing her behind my back. By the time I reached the lake, I'd made a decision. Maybe I would have that conversation with Eli after all. Not to fight over Sophie, I was done with her, but to make sure he understood exactly what kind of woman he'd won, and maybe, just maybe, to make sure the whole town understood too. The cabin sat on a small peninsula that jutted into the lake, surrounded by pine trees and accessible only by a narrow dirt road. I'd spent summers here as a kid, learning to fish with my grandfather and listening to his stories about the old days. It was the most peaceful place I knew, which made it perfect for what I was planning. I parked the truck and sat on the dock, looking out over the water. The lake was mirror smooth, reflecting the afternoon sky like polished glass. In a few hours, this place would be chaos. But for now, it was just me and the silence and the weight of what I was about to do. My phone had been buzzing nonstop, even with it turned off. When I finally powered it back on, I had 37 missed calls and over 100 text messages. Most were from Sophie, increasingly desperate as the day wore on. Sophie, Nick, please call me. We need to talk. Sophie, I know you're angry, but running away isn't solving anything. Sophie, my parents are asking questions I can't answer. Where are you? Sophie, the whole town is talking. People are saying terrible things about both of us. Sophie, I made a mistake, but I love you. Doesn't that count for something? Sophie, Eli means nothing to me. It was just one night. Just closure. Sophie, please don't throw away 3 years over one stupid mistake. One stupid mistake. She was still calling it that, like it was a momentary lapse in judgment instead of weeks of planning and lies. The bridesmaids were texting too, but their messages had a different tone. Jenna, you're being cruel, Nick. Sophie made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve this. Tara, what you did at the wedding was humiliating. For all of us. Maya, you need to grow up and handle this like an adult. Like an adult. These were the same women who'd encouraged Sophie to cheat, who'd helped plan her secret meeting with Eli, who'd laughed about what a fool I was. Now they were lecturing me about maturity. But the most interesting messages came from other people. People whose relationships I'd exposed in my final group text. Jason, Maya's boyfriend. Is it true about Maya and the bartender? Kevin, Tara's husband. Need to talk to you about Tara. Call me. David, Jenna's husband. Where did you get those photos of Jenna? Are there more? I smiled. The dominoes were falling exactly as I'd hoped. Sophie and her friends had built their little conspiracy on the assumption that everyone would keep everyone else's secrets. But secrets are only powerful when they stay secret. Around 4 o'clock, I heard a car coming down the dirt road, then another. I looked through the cabin window and saw Eli's red Mustang pull up, followed by Sophie's white sedan. They'd come together, apparently. How romantic. I watched them get out and look around. Sophie was still in her wedding dress, though it was wrinkled now and stained with tears and makeup. Eli wore jeans and a tight t-shirt that showed off his gym-sculpted physique. They looked like a couple from a soap opera, beautiful and dramatic and completely artificial. They walked toward the cabin holding hands. I opened the door before they could knock. Well, I said, look what the cat dragged in. Sophie's face crumpled when she saw me. Nick, thank God, I was so worried. Were you? I stepped out onto the porch, letting the screen door slam behind me. Funny way of showing it, bringing your boyfriend to our conversation. He's not my boyfriend, Sophie said quickly. He wanted to make sure you were okay. I looked at Eli, who was standing slightly behind Sophie like he was using her as a human shield. That's thoughtful of you, Eli. Really shows your character. Look, man, Eli said. I know you're pissed, but… Pissed? I interrupted. I'm not pissed, Eli. Pissed is what you get when someone cuts you off in traffic. This is something else entirely. Sophie stepped forward. Nick, can we please just talk? Just the two of us? What's the matter? Don't want Eli to hear what you have to say? Afraid he might learn something about you that changes his mind? Her face flushed. It's not like that. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone and opened the folder where I'd saved all her photos and emails. Should we ask Eli if he knows about your dating profiles? The ones you've been browsing for the past month? Sophie went white. You went through my computer. You left it open, multiple times. Either you wanted me to find out, or you're even more careless than I thought. I turned to Eli. Did you know she's been apartment hunting in Portland? Looking at places for one person, not two. Funny thing to do when you're planning a wedding, don't you think? Eli looked at Sophie with confusion. What's he talking about? It's not what it sounds like, Sophie said desperately. I was just exploring options, in case things didn't work out. Things like marrying me? I asked. Or things like your affair with Eli? The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Sophie looked trapped, caught between two men who were both starting to see her clearly for the first time. You want to know the really funny part? I continued. I was going to forgive you. Even after reading all your messages, even after seeing the photos, even after watching you sneak back into our bed smelling like him, I was still going to marry you today, because I'm an idiot who believes in second chances. Then let's do it, Sophie said, grabbing onto the hope in my words. It's not too late. We can still fix this. I laughed, and the sound was harsh in the quiet air. Fix this? Sophie, you didn't just cheat on me. You planned it. You involved your friends. You made me look like a fool in front of everyone I know. And even now, standing here with your lover, you're still lying to both of us. I turned to Eli. She told you I keyed your car, didn't she? Eli nodded, looking uncertain now. I never touched your car, but she told you I did, so you'd think I was jealous and unstable. She was building a case against me, making you think you were rescuing her from a bad relationship. Sophie's face was bright red now. That's not… And you, I said to Eli, you thought you were the hero in this story, didn't you? The guy who gets the girl in the end? Did it ever occur to you that if she'll cheat on me, she'll cheat on you too? Eli was staring at Sophie now, seeing her differently. Is that true? About the dating profiles? Sophie opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no good answer because there wasn't one. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You two are going to leave. You're going to drive back to town and figure out your lives without involving me. And if either of you contacts me again, if either of you tries to spin this story to make yourselves look better, I'm going to release every photo, every email, every browser search, and every lie Sophie's told over the past 6 months. You can't do that, Sophie whispered. Those are private. So was our relationship, but that didn't stop you from sharing it with Eli. I walked back toward the cabin, then paused at the door. Oh, and Sophie? The hotel called. They confirmed the change to the honeymoon reservation. Single occupancy, as requested. I'll be checking in tomorrow, alone. Thought you should know. I went inside and locked the door behind me, leaving them standing in my driveway. Through the window, I watched them argue in hushed, angry voices. Sophie was crying again, and Eli looked like he was having serious second thoughts about his prize. After a few minutes, they got in their cars and left. Sophie's sedan fishtailed on the gravel as she pulled away, spitting stones and dust. I sat on my grandfather's old couch and opened a beer, listening to the silence settle around me like a blanket. For the first time in months, I felt peaceful. The knot of anger and betrayal that had been sitting in my chest was finally starting to loosen. My phone buzzed with one last message from Sophie. Sophie, I hope you're happy. You've destroyed everything. I typed back, no, Sophie, you destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone could see it. Then I blocked her number, deleted the group chat, and turned off my phone. Tomorrow, I'd drive to that hotel and check into the honeymoon suite I'd paid for. I'd order room service and watch movies and sleep in a king-sized bed all by myself. It wouldn't be the honeymoon I'd planned, but it would be honest. And honestly, after 3 years of Sophie's lies, that felt like a luxury I couldn't afford to pass up. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the water gold and red. Somewhere in town, Sophie and Eli were probably still arguing. The bridesmaids were probably dealing with their own relationship disasters. The gossips were probably having the time of their lives. But here, in my grandfather's cabin, surrounded by pine trees and silence and the truth, I was finally free. The Riverside Hotel was the fanciest place in town, which wasn't saying much. It had been built in the 1920s as a grand resort, but decades of economic decline had left it faded and slightly desperate, like an aging beauty queen still wearing her crown. The honeymoon suite was on the top floor, with a view of the lake and a heart-shaped jacuzzi that had probably seemed romantic when disco was popular. I checked in alone at noon on Sunday, exactly 24 hours after I was supposed to have been checking in with my new wife. The desk clerk, a young woman named Beth who'd gone to high school with Sophie, tried very hard not to stare. "Will Mrs. Carver be joining you later?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "There is no Mrs. Carver," I said, "and there never will be." Beth's eyes went wide. She'd probably heard rumors. In a town this small, everyone would know about yesterday's disaster by now, but hearing it confirmed was different. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "That must be difficult." "Actually," I said, taking the key card from her hand, "it's the best thing that's happened to me in months." The suite was ridiculous. Red velvet everywhere, mirrors on the ceiling, champagne chilling in a bucket beside the bed. It was designed for romance, for new beginnings, for people who believed in happily ever after. Instead, it was hosting a party of one. I ordered room service, a steak dinner that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week, and settled in to enjoy my freedom. The view from the window showed the lake where I'd confronted Sophie and Eli yesterday, where I'd watched their perfect romance crumble under the weight of truth. My phone, which I'd turned back on that morning, had been mercifully quiet. A few messages from Sam asking if I was okay, one from Uncle Stan telling me to take all the time I needed, and several from Detective Price updating me on the situation in town. Price. Sophie filed a harassment complaint yesterday but withdrew it this morning. Word is she and Eli had a big fight, and he's not taking her calls. Price. The bridesmaids are dealing with their own problems. Jenna's husband filed for divorce. Maya and Jason broke up. Tara's in marriage counseling. Price. Town's buzzing like a kicked hornet's nest. Mrs. Daly's having the time of her life. I smiled at that last one. Mrs. Daly had probably been waiting her whole life for a scandal this juicy. Around 4 o'clock, there was a knock at my door. I opened it expecting room service with dessert, but instead found Sophie standing in the hallway. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, eyes red from crying, wearing the same clothes she'd had on yesterday at the lake. "How did you get up here?" I asked. "I told Beth I was your wife. She gave me a key." I made a mental note to have a word with Beth about hotel security. "What do you want, Sophie?" "To talk, please, just 5 minutes." I considered closing the door in her face, but curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see what she'd say, what excuse she'd come up with now. 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside to let her in. She walked into the suite and stopped, looking around at the romantic setup that was supposed to have been ours. The champagne, the rose petals, the ridiculous heart-shaped bed. This is what we were supposed to have, she said softly. No, I corrected. This is what I was supposed to have. You were supposed to be thinking about Eli. She flinched like I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you being honest with me 6 months ago when you started having doubts. Fair would have been you breaking up with me before you started screwing your ex. Fair would have been you not making me look like an idiot in front of everyone I know. I never meant for it to happen, she said desperately. It just did. Bullshit. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken of her browser history. You've been planning this for months. The dating profiles, the apartment searches, the secret meetings with Eli. This wasn't some moment of weakness, Sophie. This was a campaign. She stared at the evidence of her deception, and I watched the last of her pretenses crumble. You're right, she whispered. I've been unhappy for a while, but I did love you, Nick. I still do. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love having a backup plan, but you don't love me, because if you did, you wouldn't have been able to do what you did. She was crying again, but this time it felt different. Less manipulative, more genuine. I've lost everything, she said. Eli won't talk to me. My friends hate me. The whole town thinks I'm a slut. My parents are so ashamed they won't even look at me. Good, I said, and meant it. Maybe now you'll understand what consequences feel like. I know I hurt you, she said. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But couldn't we try again? Start over? I looked at her standing there in my honeymoon suite, begging for another chance after everything she'd done. A part of me, the part that had loved her for 3 years, wanted to say yes, wanted to believe that people could change, that love could conquer all, that we could somehow rebuild what she'd destroyed. But a bigger part of me, the part that had spent the last 2 days learning who she really was, knew better. No, I said simply. We're done, Sophie. We were done the moment you decided Eli was worth more than our relationship. But I chose you, she said desperately. In the end, I chose you. I showed up to marry you. You showed up to marry your safety net, I corrected. After spending the night with him, after planning to keep your options open, that's not choosing me, Sophie. That's settling for me. She stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down her face, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not enough to change my mind, but enough to soften my voice when I spoke again. You're going to be okay, I said. You're smart, you're beautiful, you'll find someone else. But it won't be me. It can't be me. Not after this. She nodded, understanding finally that this was really over. What happens now? Now you leave. You go back to your life and I go back to mine, and we pretend we never knew each other. And the photos? The emails? I'd almost forgotten about my leverage. I'll keep them private, as long as you stay out of my life. But if you try to cause problems for me, if you try to spin this story to make yourself look better, I'll release everything. Understood? She nodded again, then walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the handle. I really did love you, she said quietly. I know, I replied. That's what makes this so sad. After she left, I sat in the ridiculous honeymoon suite and finished my champagne. Outside, the sun was setting over the lake, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was beautiful, peaceful, honest. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. My phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Stan. Stan. Heard Sophie came by the hotel. You okay? Nick. Better than okay. I'm free. Stan. Good. Come by the bar tomorrow. First drink's on me. Nick. Make it a double. I turned off the phone and ran a bath in the heart-shaped jacuzzi. It was ridiculous and tacky and absolutely perfect for celebrating the end of the worst relationship of my life. Tomorrow, I'd go back to my real life. I'd fix boats and drink beer with Stan and rebuild my reputation one honest day at a time. I'd probably date again eventually, but I'd be smarter about it, more careful, less trusting. But tonight, I was going to soak in this ridiculous tub and toast my freedom with overpriced champagne and remember what it felt like to be a man who knew his own worth. Sophie had tried to make me smaller, tried to make me settle for less than I deserved. But she'd failed. I was still standing, still whole, still capable of love. Just not for her. The water was warm, the champagne was cold, and the future was mine.